make the screen?
I got it. It's recording now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate your time and meeting with me today. But so and I don't know if I said this in one of my emails, but working on getting my master's in library science with ODU, which is Old Dominion University in
Where
Virginia.
is that?
It's in Southern Virginia. I'm doing it like long distance,
Okay.
but so we had to interview a librarian, and I initially reached out to Julia Torres, but she said she's also working on getting her master's. So that's how I got your name.
You know Julia?
I mean, I follow her on social media.
Okay. Okay.
So I haven't met her, but I like, another project I had to research, disrupt text.
Hmm.
So I like what she's done on there. So
Yeah.
to reach out. So, I mean, I looked at your blog and just really interested. I mean, the first question, like, I know that you started as a teacher. What sort of made you move out of teaching and into becoming a school librarian?
I think teaching, I think I was burning out in the classroom. I still enjoyed working in education. I still enjoyed students, but I had the classes, I would end up with 160, 170 students a year. It was overwhelming. And I had the smallest classroom in the school with the largest load of students. And these were students who needed a lot of TLC. So the support for me wasn't there, and I can't support them if I'm not doing as an educator. It was a rough district to be in. It was a low performing district, and I don't know, just it was time to move on. And I got an email, and if I got this email today, I probably would just ignore it. But the email, the header on it was opportunity. And the district had a program that had been developed, a Grow Your Own Librarian program, because they foresaw a shortage of librarians at the time. And they were going to pay for us to get certification to be media specialists. But there was enough funding that we could continue on and actually get a degree. So that's what did it.
Yeah, that oh Jesus. Sorry. it's one of the lunch bells. And then what then made you move out of the school and into an academic setting?
I stayed in the same school when I became a librarian. I think I was in the library there 5 or 6 more years. And the performance of the students, I think it was lessening, the academic performance was lessening over the years. And the state stepped in and they were going to take the school over. And you could stay with this charter school in the same building, or you could move to a different building. And it's just like here, every year I said, I'm leaving, I can't stand this, I'm leaving. And I think it was finally time to go. And again, an email from, I think, Indiana Black Librarians Network sent emails for a program here at ISU. I had never considered being an academic librarian, didn't really know what that would entail, but they had a special recruiting process to try and increase the representation of minoritized faculty on campus. And I was recruited through that, came and spent a weekend on campus and applied for the position and went through the process. And 9 years later, here I am.
And what's the difference between, like, how is being an academic librarian similar and different to being a school librarian?
Much more difficult to implement change as an academic librarian. You have more colleagues as an academic librarian. It doesn't innovate as fast. I think I want to say it's more restrictive. In what way does you don't connect with students as much? And I'm speaking just from one library because it's probably very different in other academic libraries. In this one, I don't connect as much with students. But at the same time, there is independence to do things that you don't have in K through 12. Here, I could develop a program, write a grant, and not have to get someone's permission or okay to do it.
Mhm.
I mean, you do want to talk to your dean. You don't want to just do things, but you have greater autonomy, I think, to do that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I don't think so. It's the way things are done, and there's a way I do things. I'm just too independent for my own good sometimes. And that has worked in both atmospheres, in both places. You are much more responsible for student success in K through 12.
Mhm.
It, K through 12 is much more demanding than being an academic, and I'm not your time. You're more accountable for your time, for your progress, for what you're doing. Your days are taken. I mean, they are here too, but here it's meetings or it's projects you're working on. There, you have to be available to faculty and to students, and um, even using the restroom is hard to do when you're in a school library. Um, a similarity, a very sad similarity, is people tell you how much they love librarians, but people for some reason just don't use libraries.
Yeah. And you find that like in the academic setting or also in the school library?
Both. One of the things we had to do with seniors when they would preparing them for graduation, they had a check sheet, make sure all your library books are returned, make sure all your obligations are met at school. So they would all have to come through the library. And I would have students every year, I would check and make sure they have any fines, no books missing. I would have students who would say, I've never been in a library. I didn't even know we had a library. And this is a high school. The library is in the front of the building. Teachers didn't bring them, and they just didn't know we had a library. That's peculiar, I think, but that happened.
Yeah, I think some of the students, and we usually have under 100 students because all the students here have IEPs, and this is a pretty high level of service. So, but yeah, so we have a very small school, and they're still like, I didn't know we had a library. Where is the library? So,
and libraries have been a part of schools forever. There were school libraries in this country before there were public libraries in many places. So with this long history of university campuses having libraries, of schools having libraries, how do we get missed?
Yeah. Well, and I know in Virginia, the Department of Education decided that if a school has under 500 students, they don't have to have a full-time librarian. So that's why, I mean, here I'm hoping to get the librarian position at this school, but it would be a fight to try to convince them to make it full-time. Because I think we've had a few part-time librarians, and I think it's just hard to do anything if you're only here 2.5 days a week.
Then do you have a staff person in that library also?
Well, right now we have nobody in the library. We don't have a librarian. That position's open, but no, normally it's when the librarian's not here,
Mhm.
like staff can go in there to get a book, but
Mhm. Do
there's,
they check it out if they go in to get the book?
well, so we find like the English team finally learned how to check out books for our
Mhm.
students, but that
Mhm.
was because, like we said, like we don't have a librarian, we need to figure out how to check out books, but before
Mhm.
it was just sort of, oh, the librarian's not here, so come back another day.
Um, Across the country, districts have been getting rid of librarians for years. They don't always have to have library degrees, which creates problems. Like right now, we've got all this going on with challenges. If you're not, if you hadn't gone to library school, if you're not affiliated with a professional organization, you don't know what to do when you have a book challenge. You really are lost when it comes to finding books. You don't know what selection tools to use. Um, so when I was a librarian, our K through our elementaries, I think the middle schools were okay, but the elementaries, you would have one librarian who would float between 2 or 3 schools. And
Wow.
the staff person was full time, but the librarian floated. So the staff person had a greater sense of ownership of that library than the librarian did. And that caused problems.
Yeah. Yeah, I could, I could say, but it's interesting because it seems like people are concerned with the literacy rates, but then they don't want to do anything about them versus other than like, here, put the kids on this computer program and it'll solve everything.
I think that when you come to terms with the idea that we really don't value children in this country, we really don't value them. And as a corollary to that, we really don't value education.
Yeah.
Then everything we're doing makes sense. Unfortunately, it makes sense. We really don't want people educated. We particularly do not want Black and Brown people educated because educated people think and ask questions, and we just want their attention devoted to Facebook and the latest gadget on their arm. We don't want them thinking and asking questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. So I know like on your blog that you say that you advocate for students and you work to remove barriers to accessing information. So how does that, like, what does that look like in your day-to-day job?
Um, my phone is ringing. It is unfortunately not as productive, not as active as I would hope it to be. Um, but as I come across things like I'm on a diversity committee and here in the library, we just kind of organically formed that last year to talk about equity and inclusion. And, uh, if I could just get the checkout desk board so that people with wheelchairs could use the checkout counter, that'd be great. But it's trying to call issues to mind, trying to get people to understand what equity really looks like, that it's not something that's limited to race and racism, but it
Mhm.
has to do with how we um, oppress our students. Student workers aren't supposed to wear hats. Why not? Why do all of our policies make it easier for librarians to do their job instead of making it easier for our patrons to find material?
Yeah.
But I was told that's how academia operates. Well, because we've always done it, right? That's how academia, and that's why I keep running into, because that's how we've always done it. And I don't think people who are so willing to say that out loud realize that they're just admitting that they have power and they want to keep it.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And so, I mean, you see that belief that like this is how we've always done it, like both in this at a school level and also in the academic setting.
I think that the changes would happen easier at K through 12. I think higher ed has this false sense of power and prestige that they want to hang on to. And, they're academia and they're above. And mm, but things are changing. If you're not paying attention, might not survive this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to sound doom and gloom, and maybe they do have what it takes to survive. But I think that it's going to be harder for
Mhm.
these old institutions to make. And I think that COVID was a way of causing things to change quicker. To me, it accelerated that. But you've got these places that aren't making those changes, and they're doing okay right now.
Yeah. Well, and how did COVID change like your job?
It hasn't. It hasn't.
You
We
were
didn't
still
even.
open?
Oh, you mean during that time? During that
Yeah.
time, um, if you had a doctor's note, you could work from home. If you didn't, you came to work every day. The library, um, you would have to request materials. You couldn't go, you were asked not to go to the stack and get books. We would get them for you. Interlibrary loan barely functioned. Um, I don't know if we still had student workers. I think we did. I worked from home. I think we still had student workers. Limited access. I think you had to be campus to come in. If you didn't have an ID, you couldn't come in. It slowed things down a bit, but it was throughout campus. It was pretty much the same thing throughout campus. So
Yeah, yeah, it took us. I mean, do you know how long the school systems in your area were closed?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, we finally reopened somewhat. I think by March we were finally,
Mhm.
but even then it was only like half capacity. So now we have these kids that haven't had like a full year of school in 2 years, and they can tell. Like,
So are they all back now or
yeah,
okay?
there's a few, like if the parents filled out whatever paperwork, they could
Mhm.
to be virtual.
Mhm.
Majority of the kids are back.
So I would imagine those students with IEPs would perform better academically in the classroom than at home.
Most did. There were a few kids where anxiety is is an
Mhm.
issue and prevents them from coming into the building. So
Mhm.
it's actually, I think I had one student last year. It was her third year in English 9 because her attendance was so horrible, and she finally passed it because,
Because tennis didn't matter.
yeah.
It was okay. Okay.
So yeah, and then there's another student who did better just because she didn't have to follow the same rules, and she wasn't as restricted as she is in the
Mhm.
school.
Mhm.
So that helped her. But yeah, most of the kids, it's just, they would log on and then, or not even log on, and you just couldn't get in touch with them. So
So the students who did do better, are they finding ways for them to continue working from home, or are they expecting them to come to school now?
well, I mean, so it was up to the parents to fill out whatever paperwork.
Mhm.
So I think a number of them, and especially like the families that don't speak English, didn't fill out that paperwork. I have one student that I had last year, and she's back and she's doing okay. There's another student, she hasn't come. And I think someone from the school should have reached out and helped them
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
stuff out, not just
Mhm.
leave it up to the parents.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I don't know. There's just so many things that like we need to keep track of, and
Mhm.
a lot falls through the cracks.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're the educators, right?
Right. Yeah. Um, do you know of any professional librarian organizations that have a strong focus in diversity?
I'm really only involved with the ALA and its affiliates, and it's oh, I can't think of it. They have ethnic caucuses. And then they have a multicultural roundtable. But specific to, that's not part of, well, states have them. We have the Indiana Black Librarians Network. This is Indiana, so we historically have not had a large Latinx population, not a large Asian American. Really, there's really not a large Black population, but I don't believe there are professional, like Reforma has state chapters, but that's ALA again. I don't think we have one here in Indiana. I don't know if there's one for this region or not. I don't know of other non-ALA organizations. I know there are others that are other non-ALA librarian organizations, but I don't know if they are DEI. I don't know.
Okay. What's DEI?
Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Okay. And so, but you do, like, in terms of ALA, some of those organizations do have that qualification?
Yeah, there's a multicultural roundtable that's been around for years. There's Reforma that is Latinx. There's AI. I don't know the letters. For Asian Pacific Islanders, APIA maybe. There's one for Native American. There's one for LGBTQIA. I don't know that there's anything for people with disabilities in ALA. I don't know that they have a specific group there.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I passionate about. Like, a lot of my students are identify as something other than white, and it seems like some years more than others we have groups of students where honestly it seems like they were just slapped with the label of emotional disabilities because they weren't performing in school. Other than it's like, well, they refuse to do their work, they don't come to school, so we'll just slap them with an eating label, and then they come to us. And it's like, if they didn't want to do their work at their base school, they're not going to want to do their work. And we're expected to somehow fit them into this mold that they don't care about. And then they end up like, it can be very chaotic because their values don't match like what we are trying to get them to do. And I keep trying to, because there's a alternative diploma, which the students don't have to meet whatever requirements, like graduation requirements, like really all they have to do is successfully pass or meet their IEP goals, but it also frees up their schedule so they can take like carpentry or cosmetology. And there's a lot of those classes in the county, but there's a real negative stigma attached to that applied studies because they think it's a cop-out or it's easier. And
when that's going to get you a really good job without having to go to college, it's not going to
exactly. So it's like, it's an option between, okay, these kids could potentially leave high school with a degree in some, or they struggle through for 4 to 5 years, and then they end up working at McDonald's. So that's something I keep battling them with. But
do they bring in people from those professions to talk to students so that they can see how lucrative those careers can be?
I mean, so we've had career days in the past. I mean, not with COVID, but we bring people in. And I think so, because our students have to go to other schools in order to take those classes. And I think sort of a culture shock. I think both for the staff teaching those students and then our students. So I wish there was more support for them, when they come back to the school and it's like, okay, you need help with your work, you need help figuring out how to navigate the class. But
so does your district pull out all students who have an IEP?
No, it's just the ones that need like the highest level of support. So it starts with, we have team talk classes at base schools, or self-contained if they need a little bit more support. Then the next level, they have, they're called comprehensive service sites, and those are within base schools, but they're smaller classes. There's usually 1 or 2 clinicians available to students. And those are usually the students that have emotional behavioral disabilities. And then the next level is my school. So very small classes.
So I'm trying to think, as a librarian, how does that affect the way you would service those students with behavioral or emotional or intellectual disabilities?
So I mean, what I think would be best for this school is like really pushing into the classes and helping with research and how to use new technology. Because there is all this great technology, but I think the teachers have a lot on their plates that they already need to do, and learning like another thing, how to get to do. So I think that would be really helpful. Maker spaces would be good in the library, just to get them in. And it's like, fine, you don't want to read something, but at least like come in and hang out. So I think that's like, that would be the best bet in terms like right now.
Or even bringing some of those students in as library assistants, you know, to help shelve books or decorate the library or create programming, have a student advisory board so that they can plan things for. And these things all sound so cool, but then there's the practicality of it. Like, you know, when do you do it? You know, because it's hard for students to stay after school if they have to ride a bus home.
Right.
And there's not pull out during the day. So how do you do it?
I mean, so that's the good thing about our school, is a little more relaxed. So, you know, like I can just go to my principal and say like, oh, I have this idea, and more times than not, he's willing to like hear me out and let me flesh it out. So, you know, and I think like the staff here wants to figure out what is working for a student. And it's like, okay, then how can we fit that into their schedule and make it work? So, and I know they're trying to develop an after school program. So that's something that they're working on. But
do you make your principal and your staff aware of all your programming, all your events, all your successes in the library? Like how many books, keep track of how many books are checked out and show the increase or decrease, or
I've never seen that.
What the new books are. Because I used to do that. I ended up doing the school newsletter, the faculty newsletter, because no one else was doing it. And that brought more attention to the library. And of course, I would share what was going on in different parts of the school, but of course, you know, it's centered around what the library was doing, and they got that information out there. But especially at the end of the year, to do a like an end of the year report to let your principal know how many students you serviced, how many books you've added to the library, you know, what your programming was, to really promote what you've done is really important to do.
Yeah, and I haven't, there was a full-time librarian when I first started at this school 4 years ago. And she definitely, like, she was sort of involved in a lot of different things. And then after she left, then that position went to part-time, and we had one woman, and she, you know, if you asked her to push into a class, she would, but she's, you know, and sometimes every once in a while she would do some sort of function in the library, but then she left. Then we got another woman in right when COVID, like when we were shut down for COVID, and she barely did anything. Like, I think she was working on her doctorate, and that's really all she was doing at work.
Wow.
So it's just like, I know she ordered some new books, but she got like high-low books, nonfiction ones, but I think I don't even think they were high-low. I think they were just geared towards elementary school. And, you know, our students don't, it's just, the library has just fallen into disrepair, I think. So,
are you given a budget?
Yes, I don't know how much, but like central office gives each school a certain amount.
As they should. The state has rules and regs about that. You're supposed to be given X amount of dollars in most states, X amount of dollars for the student.
So I know someone from central office is working with one of the other English teachers to order new books for the students. So we're trying, like, asking students, trying to find new books. But I think this ninth grade, because I teach ninth grade, this ninth grade group their reading capabilities are much higher than I've ever seen at this school. I mean, I've only been here 4 years, but just much more capable, like reading on grade level. In years prior, most of the students are like 4th, 5th grade reading level, if that. So I think it's this balance between like getting, engaging YA books, but also getting those high-low books that the kids don't immediately dismiss it when they see it's 400 pages.
Look at Learner. They've got some good ones. Learner has really done a good job at diversity with their material, and they do a lot of high-low as well.
Yeah, because I was looking at high-low because I saw some article somewhere, but a lot of the high school ones seem to center around trauma or bullying, and that's like a real trigger for a lot of students. And so I ended up going to like the middle school because that was a little, like not like, Timmy has to find out what happened to his sister who got murdered. It's like, whoa.
So graphic novels and comic books are really good.
Yeah, we have some of those.
And it's sports, fashion, it's find out what their interests are. And it may not even be fiction, it may be, magazines are great too. Finding out what their interests are, music, and finding books that support that. I used to take groups of students to a bookstore, to a Barnes and Nobles. We'd get a bus and we'd go to Barnes and Nobles, and the students would pick out books for the library, which was
purchase them there?
Yeah, we had a purchase order, and we'd get the books there. But the tricky part is that Barnes and Nobles was in a different neighborhood than the school, so they didn't necessarily have books that students would like. So they struggled to find something, but it excited them. Yeah.
That sounds like a good idea, because we have a level system. So, and the higher up the levels they are, if they get good, if they have good behavior, then they get extra rewards and stuff. So I feel like that would be a good, because we're looking for like different things that we can do with the students. Food. So I feel like that would be like a good excursion.
Yeah. And then we'd stop at McDonald's. You have to stop at McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've been to McDonald's since then.
Yeah, I found, because I taught a personal development class, and CNN did a documentary on a man who was incarcerated at the time, and he was teaching feminism to his fellow inmates. And so I found it, and it turns out like he had been released, and he lives in California, but he happened to be on the East Coast, able to like get him in and talk to my students. The only thing they remember is like, we got to eat at McDonald's. Like that was the best.
Wow.
Not that they got to talk to this awesome, engaging man. McDonald's.
Are they political? Are they aware?
They are, some of them. But the message I get from the county is like, don't engage, like don't talk about your beliefs. We have a few students, like we have a large autism population. And I feel like it's hard to have like an open dialogue that doesn't turn into an argument, because the kids aren't like listening. They're like, this is what I believe. And there's no, like I don't argue with them, because I feel like there's never going to be a point if we're arguing about politics where they're going to be like, yes, you're right. I see your zone in on what they believe.
But it's good enough that they can see what you, not accept it, but if they can just hear what you believe.
I don't think they can.
Yeah.
not some of them. Like some of them can't. Because
they're growing up in a time where, we don't do that. We don't go for understanding each other. We want to beat you over the head so that you can agree with me. And we know it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
We're doing a real disservice to our young people, I think. To
Yeah.
ourselves.
Well, like, when the thing with George Floyd, like when he was murdered and like anything, when that comes out, it's like the message from central office is don't talk about it in your class, send them to their counselor, to their clinician if they need to talk about it.
And the
Which
counselors are trained, right?
ours are. They're
I mean, to have race-based conversations with young people.
well, maybe not that. In terms of, I think we're working on that, but that's an ongoing thing that we need to work on.
There are quite a few books that have come out on George, well, not quite a few, but there are books on George Floyd. There are books on Black Lives Matter. There are books on Colin Kaepernick that have come out also for young people.
Okay.
And I think Kaepernick is supposed to be writing something. It might be a picture book though, but he's writing something too.
All right, let me see. Oh, one question. What does a typical day as an academic reference and instruction librarian look like?
You know, there's no typical day.
But what are some things that you like do during the day?
Check my email. I'll typically start out with check email. I'm trying to really be more serious, and I have to be because stuff I'm doing. I try and while I'm here in my office to do more reading while I'm here during the day, and I think my schedule is finally slowing down so that I can do that. Reading those wonderful picture books in the library because I have a children's collection here, and I focus on YA, but I have children's collections, so it's board books and picture books and early readers. So getting more familiar with that material. So it's reading, time reading. That time is beginning to be there. Too many meetings. You're my third one today. And it's not always like that, but it can be a lot of meetings. Yeah. Depends on what kind of projects you have going on how your day goes, I guess.
And how do you work with the students?
It varies. I had someone come to my office yesterday, a faculty sent her over to find something. Quite often they're referred by lately since COVID, faculty has much more likely to send students to me to get help with research. I work with, and these are doctoral students. I think the faculty for some reason felt a need for extra support for that student, and they sent them to me to help them with their research. This has only happened once. This I wish could happen more often. I was downstairs and waiting for the elevator, and there was a young girl, and I just started talking to her and asked her how she was doing, and she wasn't doing real well. And I asked her, is it school or home? And she said schoolwork. And it turned out she had a research project and she had no idea how to get the material. She's in an asynchronous online class, and she was told to find scholarly peer-reviewed resources. She knew what that meant. She knew where to find them. So we came upstairs and got her what she needed.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then, so
I do instruct classes. I liaise with the College of Education. So I provide instruction sessions to classes. That is the bulk of how I interact with students, is doing that. Some of them will set up to meet with me one-on-one and provide assistance with them in that way.
and is that the individual instruction?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just for research?
Yeah, how to use library materials. That's that's it. I have had reading groups that I put together for students. They gets tricky because you've got students who already have plenty of reading to do. Um, they're small groups of students. They get through the books, but and they really enjoyed it. We had a good time doing that, but the next year the interest wasn't there from the students, so it didn't carry, and I never started it again.
And how did you start that? Like, did you put flyers out, or how
Yeah,
did
I
you?
had flyers. I let faculty know about it. It was aimed at Black girls. I made sure faculty knew, Black faculty. There were events aimed at Black students when classes started. So I showed up at those events and had signups for them.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at your blog, and then at the Cunningham,
Mhm.
the Cunningham like website. It looked really, like I hadn't thought about like an academic librarian job.
Mhm.
Definitely, definitely interested, and I like because I feel that, like, when I was trying to figure out what university I was going to go to, it was like between Old Dominion and Catholic, and I liked Catholic because just going to the information session, wasn't just all white people, but Catholic universities like 5 times more expensive than,
Wow.
and so I just went, but I've been happy with it. But yeah, I mean, it's most of the students are white, and all of the faculty are white.
Yeah.
I think it's a missed opportunity. But
Are
one of
you?
my
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm sorry. Go
No, go
ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say, like, one of my professors, like, I feel like she does try to do a good job of having us read something from the textbook and then say, like, okay, what's missing from this? And then will tell us to look for other resources that talk, like we had to read about the history of libraries. And then she's like, find another article that talks about who is missing from this chapter. So I appreciated that.
Mhm. Are you familiar with the Spectrum Scholars?
I don't think, well, I think because I applied for scholarships in the beginning of this, and that spectrum sounds familiar. Is that what you're talking about? Are they,
It's a scholarship program. You
yeah,
could reapply every year because they want you. To me, the catch with it is you already need to be in library school when you apply for it, because people typically look for help before, get me
right.
through this. But it's specifically for people of color, and it is a pretty prestigious little cohort of people.
Hmm.
They do, people who come out of that program do really amazing things in libraries, so it can connect you with other librarians of color,
Yeah.
and empower you in ways that um, your educational training might not be doing.
Yeah, because there was another teacher, and she was putting up like librarian blogs, and all of them were white, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I said something to my husband, and he said I was being too sensitive, but like,
No.
I think that matters. Like, it just,
Yeah, yeah.
you might need to like go the extra mile, but it matters, and people notice.
Yeah. Um, I picked up a class. I've not taught at the university level before. Have you heard of Sarah Park Dallin?
Sarah Park.
Dallin?
Mm-mm.
She's a librarian. She's not, I'm sorry, she's not a librarian. She's a list professor. Um, she was at St. Catherine's in Minnesota, and she left that for Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. And she had a class that she was teaching on young adult library materials. And she asked me if I'd teach it as an adjunct. And when she teaches this class, and of course, I'm doing the same thing she did because I inherited all the materials. All of the books that she selects, even though she's teaching concepts of young adult materials, all of her material is from BIPOC authors,
Mm-hmm.
or with BIPOC representation. They're not all BIPOC authors, but yeah. So um, And she years ago, when she was putting this together, she said, if I only put one or two on the list, her all white students would only read white authors. So she said the only way to get them to read something else is not to give them a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's because I took a young adult library course over the summer. And I think the only books that I read that by white authors were from like a classic, like a list of classic books that we had to read.
Mm-hmm.
They were painful. I didn't like them. But
Yeah, we
else.
have that. I have a list of classics, but I also put Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and I put Bless Me Ultima. And I don't think there's an Asian book. I have Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, because it has Jewish representation in it.
Mm.
But you still have Chocolate War, which I've never read. You still have
Yeah, that was one of them.
what's the other one that everybody reads about the boy? Can't think of the name of it.
There was the one like where his plane went down. Hatchet.
No. I think he just graduated and he's driving across country or something.
Oh, Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher. Yes, JD. I hate that book.
Yeah, I read that in high
Hate
school
that
and I didn't
book.
like it. And one of my friends really liked it, and I was like, nope, didn't get it then, and I don't want to.
It to me, it read like a white boy book. It just did nothing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's the thing with books. We don't all relate to the same books.
Right.
We can read those books that are outside of our experience, those windows, and we can learn about other people, which is good. We've spent our whole life doing that. We need some mirrors now. It's time for some mirrors.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I really appreciate you meeting with me. And look, yeah, I was telling my husband, like, since last week, I was like, I have this interview coming up and I'm really excited. And so I really appreciate your time.
Oh, sure. If I can do anything else to help you, you've got my information. Just let me know.
I will.
Okay. Yeah, keep in
you.
touch and I'll send you the recording of this.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, great. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.